Totally intent upon completing an immediate task, a man is deaf to any allurement. The total concentration required for reaching any spiritual goal. This is the final symbol of the first half of the cycle. Virgo, 30 degrees. In the year cycle, the fall equinox is now at hand. Autumn begins. Through spring and summer, many ways and byways have been experienced. The last message of this hemicycle of individualization is that on all decisive occasions, what must be done has to be done so intently that no outer voices can penetrate the mind, still less the soul. The neophyte stands at the gates of the sacred pyramid. There is only one step he can take, ahead, or he is lost. This is the culminating step, the decision that results from a myriad of small choices. Still, a shadow of hesitation can remain. Attention may be distracted from the now by a voice from the past, glamorizing some old memory. The outer doors of perception and thought must be closed so the soul can complete its conquest of illusion. Hello, it's Karen of Soul Symbols, Astrology and Tarot. And what you've just heard was the Sabian symbol from the 30th degree of Virgo, which is the degree after the actual place of the solar eclipse. And at the end of what I have to say here, I will bring you the Sabian symbol of the 29th degree of Pisces, where Saturn is sitting in opposition to this eclipse. But this eclipse is a major ending of a generational eclipse cycle that started in September 1968. So we are closing out old structures, old ways of being in the world, as we're confronted by culmination of a collective shadow at the end of the cycle. This is huge. So it has been a cycle of the people rising up, of that counterculture of 1968. That was the first solar eclipse of this series in Virgo, around the 29th degree and all around between the 21st and 23rd of September. So this was a seeding of this full cycle that is culminating now at this solar eclipse. And it was the seeding of the civil rights movement. There were political upheavals and huge anti-war movements. We also had, previous to that, in 1967, we had that Summer of Love. And that was very, sorry, I'm laughing thinking about it. It's very Piscean in nature with the LSD and the collective lovings. And also during that 1967, we saw assassinations of civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr., and also of Robert Kennedy. So we did have violence even within that loving energy that was going on. There were the two things going on. Summer of Love culminated in the Summer of Activism. And that was September 1968 when this solar eclipse in Virgo was happening. If we follow these threads through, the next Virgo solar eclipse was in September 1987 when we saw, amongst other things, the uprising of the Palestinian people in their first intifada. Then in September 2006, we had that ongoing Iraq war that didn't peter out till 2011. That was a dark period in history, and the invasion of Lebanon by Israel. These threads are culminating here. The themes of uprising against oppressive or violent rule, wars, and the Middle East theme, they're all currently huge issues now. We're dealing with Virgo and that culmination of that cycle, which is hopeful in that it presents us that point to reflect and contemplate and an opportunity to plan and enact a very different way of being in the world, both on an individual level and collectively. What we do have in the sky, though, is a gnarly square with Mars in Scorpio squaring to an out of bounds Pluto in Aquarius. And Aquarius is about the people, the collective. And that's 2 days after the eclipse. So we have the equinox on the 22nd, and then we have this square. That combined shadow of Mars and Pluto can bring brute force, ruthlessness, but it can also stir drive, passion, and courage in the collective efforts towards a point of catharsis. And that can usher in renewal and regeneration. So we have both that shadow and that positive push with Mars and Pluto. So these elements, together with the grand water trines that are coming up, you can have a look at my video I put out last week, which was Saturn retrograde and the grand trines. I'll put it above. Give space for the dissolution. Okay, it's water, and water in alchemy dissolves. It's a dissolution of the ego and shadow and a new material reality. Okay, and plus the astrology of 2026, it's showing us we've got a window of opportunity to critically think, Virgo, about our individual and collective reality, and then we can act for inner and outer change. I think there's much hope for the decision of change that we can collectively make. Our individual responsibility is to attend to the reality of what is an extreme divisiveness in our world. There's no two ways about it. It's breaking out in England big time here. And there's that divisiveness between those who have and those who have not, between the growing authoritarianism of the elite leadership and the will of the people. So it's like a melting pot of potential conflict. But the hope within all of this is the signs in the sky of the seeding of the new ways of being, new structure, to have new understandings and wisdom. Where there's conflict on the outside, it calls us to look at the conflict within us individually. So we often feel, don't we can change the outside via our actions and activism. And yeah, it's really important for us to bring our voices into the marketplace, to express our discontent, our anger and our grief with what's going on. It's hideous at the moment. Yet at the same time, we're being called to radically confront what is going on inside us. We're called to change our inner world. And this is the wonderful perspective of astrology, because the collective shadow is about the archetypes that are part of our individual psyches, that us above, so below. And so the trick is to look at the archetypes we have to work with. And here with this solar eclipse in Virgo, the ruler is Mercury. So Mercury is that psychopomp traveling between the gods of Mount Olympus and down to Hades in the underworld, bringing messages. He brings that pattern to our psyches, traveling between our mind and emotions, our material world and our inner world, bringing messages that can heal, release and strengthen us. But we also need to remember that Mercury archetype is also a trickster. It's the card of the magician in the tarot. So he can bring trickery and illusion to us. And that illusion brings us to the realm of Pisces, with the above being Virgo and the opposite below Pisces. And we have Saturn sitting in opposition. And therefore we're confronted with both the shadow of the Virgo and Mercury archetype and the Pisces, therefore Jupiter, whose temple Pisces is, archetype. So we'll look at both of this. We also have the opposition of the South Node in Virgo with the solar eclipse and the North Node in Pisces with Saturn. And they're playing a pivotal role in bringing awareness to us of the conflict and imbalance within us, so that we can deal effectively with what's going on outside of us. As we do our work and become aware of the collective archetypal shadow, we free ourselves to make conscious decisions that don't add to an increase of hidden, misinformed, or malicious outward actions. Our wholeness isn't in getting rid of the shadow, it's to acknowledge that it resides both in us and outside of us, and in everyone. This makes critical, divisive, and judgmental words and actions less lightly, and we learn to respond in that more soulful way rather than from grief, anger, rage, criticism, judgment, divisiveness, and feel that division and the difficulties that we perceive to be out there. So our actions, our words, and our very presence become healing. So let's have a look at Saturn opposing Virgo. He's at the end degrees of Pisces, so he's truly the dweller on the threshold. He's bringing you to a place which is between two realities. So that is the time between March 2023 and May 2025, when he built those deep foundations in the Pisces area of his chart. And that of the time when he will ingress back into Aries for good in February 2026. So we got this 6-month retrograde in Pisces. So he is sitting opposite the solar eclipse in Virgo, the second new moon of Virgo this month, and after the lunar eclipse. So we are bedding down into the reality now. Our bodies, our daily lives, our devotion, our acts of service, taking care of our daily routines, bodies, our well-being. Saturn will show us what we're harvesting over the next six months from that initial period he was in there. We're between a huge ending and sowing the seeds for a new beginning, and Saturn's bringing us into this liminal space between what has been in 2023 and what will be after February 2026, to highlight the structures that have been built and those that need to be dismantled. So look at the things that you learn from March 2023, and I'll link the Saturn in Pisces retrograding into Pisces at the top. Go back to that and look at the foundations that were being built. It's here that Saturn is asking for discipline, for a sense of bedding down into seeing the whole picture in Pisces, that oneness, the oceanic, seeing that and bedding it down into reality. So in Virgo, we're looking at our everyday, our flow of life, that home and hearth, our bodies, our routines. With Saturn, for example, if we've been neglecting our bodies, or our daily routine is non-existent, this would be unsupportive for us going forward. These are practicalities. What we might see during these few weeks before these grand water trines activate is that gap where we're chaotic perhaps, or where we're not in a good routine that supports our work in the world and supports us personally. So, for example, if Pisces is in your first house, it could be issues of body and identity. And Saturn's saying to you, okay, you've seen what is and what can be, and now it's time to make that choice and changes and step over that threshold into the new, or continue where you were if you're happy with that. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with continuing if we're happy, but the choice is this seeding of a new, beautiful thing. So Saturn's sitting in Pisces in opposition points towards a oneness, a wholeness, ruled by Jupiter, that constantly attempts to bring many parts into one. And that opposition to Virgo, who's ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is facts, information, and the job of gathering those facts and information, or communicating those facts and information, breaking the whole down and dividing it into parts. These sit in opposition. So the alchemy here is to look at those polarities that one into many and the many into one. Now, we know both are needed. We need many, we need one. The light through a prism makes many colours, okay? But yeah, both needed. So that the experience of wholeness that Pisces brings and the differentiation, the breaking things down, the understanding the different parts that comprise the whole, both of those are necessary in life. It's not an either or. So we may long for wholeness, oneness, in a relationship. We want to experience that wholeness between two people who are entirely differentiated by their bodies, their minds, by who they are as a person. Yet there's that working towards a wholeness between two different people. Virgo and Pisces work like this. That's how the axes of Virgo and Pisces work. We're looking at Pisces because not only is Saturn there, the North Node is there. And Saturn is the planet of no, seeking to limit that merging, that getting lost in illusion of utopian oneness of merging. This in this life is an illusion. We may have experiences of it, but we also need to eat, work, compromise with others, break ourselves into different roles, wear different masks. The mother, the sister, daughter, friend, businesswoman, teacher, nurse, counsellor to our family, and many more roles who, depending on who you are, we have a myriad of roles. Whoever we are, whatever we are doing in this world, we don't just have one face. Our roles require adjustments in how we relate, where our boundaries sit, Saturn, depending on our trust of that person in front of us or the type of relationship we have with them. So it's not a good idea to share your sensitive personal information with someone who gossips, and gossip is a shadow of Virgo. And if you're a therapist, you don't share your personal information with those you're there to support, listen, and guide. Then, with therapy, there's the ethical frameworks and professional guidelines which keep both the therapist and client safe and provide that therapeutic environment for healing. In that atmosphere, we can bring our hopes, wishes, and fears or our heartbreaks to the client because we're there to hold space for that person. So as a therapist, you'll be aware of your inner process as you interact in order to be authentic. But the mask of therapist remains. This is the role. The only true oneness we have is our soul, our authentic self that returns to the oneness at the end of life. Astrologically, we have these two things: Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, Mercury, the merchant, the trader, the wheeler and dealer in the marketplace. And we have Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, the bringer of divine law, the generous, optimistic Father Christmas character who brings the people and the material into a community to create that flow of giving and receiving, of loving and being loved. That tension between the two. What's interesting is we're having the Virgo solar eclipse with the South Node, which works for us to move into a more spiritual realm, to expel the things in our lives that keep us caught up and entangled in this world, so we can have that experience of detachment from the material and an understanding of temporality and of the cosmic and universal, the oneness. So that South Node in Virgo is working in Mercury's temple and this new beginning. So it's bringing about a decrease of the many, the movement. So the picture is that merchant Mercury is sitting down, sitting still and contemplating. And that sun in the solar eclipse is going to move into Libra the day after. It's the equinox. The scales of justice in the tarot, the ma'at, the weighing of the heart against the feather in the underworld. So the issue will become about our hearts being light, knowing we are doing the best with what we have and where we are in life. So that lightness doesn't come from running from one thing to another, trying to get done a myriad of tasks that we've added to our daily, weekly, monthly to-do lists. Our lives broken down into manageable portions of time. We need organization, but if we become caught in that manic and incessant movement of doing it, it can stifle spontaneity and the creative flow and bring anxiety where we can't control the uncontrollable that much of time. And that is Virgo. That is the Virgo mercurial movement, wheeling, dealing, doing, okay? And at the other side of the axis, we have the North Node. And that's about our desires, our hunger for life. So the North Node is about increase, and that can be good or bad. We got Jupiter there, and the shadow of Jupiter is arrogance, self-righteousness. It's about excess, overindulgence, okay? So more can be good or bad. But we need that awareness of our entanglement in our desires, the hunger in our wants. In a passionate pursuit of our desires, we can neglect reality, neglect ourselves and others, and the need to attend to daily practicalities, which is the Virgo axis. Have you ever been so passionate, we've all been in love, about someone or something that you love, that your sight is narrowed to just that? Time passes, you get a weird sense of time. You haven't spent any of that time with any other person except the object of your desire. And relationships fall by the way. Or you could have been, your object of desire and love could have been, painting or scrolling. And the time passes and you don't notice until your stomach rumbles. And you realise you haven't eaten for 8 hours. You've missed the practicalities we need to honour our bodies. Saturn is Chronos, time, and he's there to teach us about the necessity of using it wisely. Okay. Pisces energy can have us lost in the spiritual, in illusion, escapism, daydreaming, imagination, and not wanting to engage with life. That there can be that lack of grounding in reality, where Virgo will be breaking things down and flying about trying to plan and accomplish practical tasks. Pisces is dreaming of holding it all, bringing the all into a unity of one in order to merge with that one, whatever it is. Saturn retrograde will be showing us where we're entangled in spiritual delusion or bypass, or have our head in the clouds. He'll ground us down. He'll say, no, where we're too far into escapism or too far into the spiritual bypassing, too often lost in daydreaming. If you have neglected reality, Saturn, the Lord of Karma, will show you the effects of your neglect. So it might be final demands for the unpaid bills that you've ignored by going off into daydreams or having too many wines. They may drop through the letterbox. Or that sink you've been planning to get fixed leaks all over the floor, that water of Pisces. Or those relationships you've neglected dissolve away. This is of importance. Saturn in Jupiter's temple of Pisces, instituting the boundaries, digging the foundations, placing limitations. He's bringing us reality of life, and more importantly, that principle of time, of cause and effect. He is really the dweller on the threshold in the last degrees of a last sign of the zodiac. He's not there to prevent us moving towards our desires or of wanting to pull everything into one big beautiful unity, but he will ground us in the reality and teach us the wisdom of the real. It's what he does. He's beautiful. It's sometimes harsh and difficult, but Saturn is beautiful. I'm speaking from the perspective of of having my second Saturn returned, so I'm allowed to. Yeah, okay. He is beautiful. He brings the most beautiful contemplations and wisdom. But then in Virgo, the archetype to break things down, to analyze, to compartmentalize, to maintain material perfection, purity and control, and the highly critical thinking that is required for this task is often turned into the inner critic and the judge, and it narrates our inability to maintain those standards, or it's pointed outwards towards people who don't reach those standards. We're not accepting our shadow is this push towards purity and perfection and control. Then we can be seeing that in other people. We can judge them for not reaching those standards we feel are necessary for life and survival. Critical thinking is needed in this world. It's a gift of Virgo. But the sun is being eclipsed by the moon there, and it's a point where our ego will be shadowed. Solar eclipses often bring a complete change in direction or in the way we see ourselves, to our identities and to our purpose. And this is doors closing on old ways if we're too busy with our to-do lists, or we've got our heads too stuck in the clouds. We're not going to be able to grasp hold of this point of change. And it is such an important one at the moment. So where Pisces dreams, Virgo plans, and where Virgo critically thinks, Pisces imagines utopia. Both are needed, but both require balance. He's making ready the foundations of our new direction, our new identities, and our new purpose. This will be 6 months in the making, both the after effects of this solar eclipse, the closing of doors, and the seeding of the new, and Saturn's transit back into Pisces. What follows this solar eclipse is a series of groundwater trines and a period of emotional culmination and release, not just as individuals, but as a collective. And that, to me, is suggesting this period will not be easy, but will bring about a dissolution of the old structure and ways of being, and that new reality emerging from the water, just like the crab emerging from the deep onto a path between two pillars in the moon. It's that calcination, dissolution, calcination. So we're being invited to participate in individual and collective alchemy, to remodel, reinvent, and to rediscover the true nature of what it is to be one soul amongst 8 billion souls currently in a body experiencing this hideous beauty called life. This solar eclipse in Virgo is a fated eclipse. It is a point of destiny, of fate, of culmination, of endings and the seeds of new beginnings. And if you just look at the tarot cards, Virgo is the hermit. So the hermit is very practical, but he's also someone who contemplates, who drops deeply within himself, and who finds the light in the darkness. The card for Jupiter in Pisces is the Wheel of Fortune. This is fate. Fortune is to do with the moon, and it is that sense of there are things we cannot control. Pisces knows this. Pisces often has to go with the flow because of the realization of the oneness, of the wholeness, that they are a part and one person among many. So those two extremities are sitting within Virgo and Pisces. But there is that beautiful inner alchemy we can do. What I've noticed in making this podcast is the mechanics of Virgo and Pisces. this overall vision of this being an end of a very long eclipse cycle, which does encompass the whole of my life. I am a Pisces, so I am constantly trying to get disparate facts into a whole piece. And I hope I've done that for you. I hope that I haven't left you confused. But I was aware of the so many details, the south node and north node, the eclipse, the endings, the seedings, Saturn, the grand trines. There was so much that I tried to put together, and the Sabian symbols. Really hope it's beneficial to you. I am going to leave you with the Sabian symbol for Pisces, for Saturn being there in the north node. And if you feel a little scattered, which you possibly could do with this amount of information, listen to the first Sabian symbol at the beginning and listen to the last. There are timestamps below. Yep. And I'll say all the bumps. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, please comment. Let's have a conversation below. You know, how are you feeling right now? What's the energy like for you? What's the chaos? What's the world looking like for you? You know, please leave a comment. It would be lovely to have a conversation. And if you want a reading, astrology, tarot, shadow readings, soul path readings, go to www.soulsymbols.co.uk. Okay, and now the Sabian symbol. Bye-bye, everyone. And to conclude, I'm going to read the Sabian symbol for Pisces 29 degrees, which is where Saturn is sitting. Light breaking into many colours as it passes through a prism. The analytical power of the mind necessary for the formulation of life processes in their many aspects. Cycles of existence begin in a unity and end in what I have called multi-unity. At this stage of consummation, the many individual differences are totaled. They constitute a sum. Within that sum, a unified total, the inevitability of future process of differentiation is implied, because every cycle leaves a mass of waste products slowly returning to the unconscious state of chemical matter, of humus. What the symbol tells us is that unity will always break again into multiplicity. The prism is always there. There is no absolute unity. If anything could be called absolute, it's the relationship between the one and the many. This symbol points to the fundamental type of operation in all modes of existence. The most beautiful and seemingly everlasting experience of unity will in time be superseded by the need to attend to a multiplicity of details. Existence implies differentiation.